to my channel. I am doing a special beginners starter kit kind of a vlog for you today. I'm not going to show my face very much throughout it, just so you know. And yeah, I hope you guys get some tips and tricks and hints on getting started in your sewing journey. All right, first of all, I want to show you my number one thing for beginners, a sewing machine. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you my sewing machine and the one that I have. So I have the Elna 40 sewing machine. I also have an overlocker, but that's definitely not paramount for a beginner, but if you want to, go ahead because they are fantastic. But I just want to focus on the sewing machine more so than anything. I got this as my 21st birthday present from my nana, and she also got me that one as well. Some things that I really love about this sewing machine is definitely this little guy here. It makes the speed of the needle slower and faster. I have it on slow when I am needing to sew quietly, but it is so good for doing really intricate small pieces that you need to just take your time, and you don't have to have good pressure on your presser foot. Like, oh my goodness, sorry about the mess down there. That is a fantastic beginner's requirement, I think. The bobbin part is like super easy to use as well. Like, that is so quick and easy to get in there. I'm sorry with my hand. Anyway, I'm gonna leave that because it's not about the ins and outs. It's just a really quick basic look at everything that I have as a beginner. So that's the first bit, the actual sewing machine itself. Second, needles. You want as many needles as possible because you're probably going to break a few at the very start. You want a universal one, I would recommend first. Alrighty, so as stated in the title of this video, it is a declutter because look at this mess, my goodness. So I'm going to pop you guys up and I will talk to you through this, because all of this stuff is, it's not all beginner friendly stuff, but it's all got a place. Alrighty, I want to talk to you about this little gem first. So I'm going to declutter him. Just give me a second. Alright, so in here I have my fabric glue. Very, very handy for necklines and cuffs and things like that. So on here, for instance, I have glued just this bit, and then when I go to sew it, it's just not going to move, or it moves a lot less. I think that is like my number one thing that I've ever bought, and I wish I had have bought it when I was first. Oh, look at that, it says there for basting seams, hems, trims and zippers. So I haven't even used it for a zipper before, but that, honestly, pro tip there, I reckon. But this little guy, this is a seam ripper, and my goodness, as a beginner, you are gonna need it, but not just as a beginner, because every single person I know has to have a ripper. Whether or not you've been sewing for a bazillion years or only a bazillion minutes, honestly, best investment ever. You can get like all different sorts. Like, this is just a small one. I know you can get ones that are like really big, like the handle's really big, which is really handy because you always need it, and they always seem to disappear when you need it the most. So, seam ripper. Now, this isn't necessarily a beginner one either, but this is my crochet hook. Great for if you have a overlocker, but that's just only if you have an overlocker. So I'm going to put him over there. Alrighty, the good old, let me just take all this out for a second. The good old argument of clips or pins. Well, when I first started, I used pins, but now clips are my number one. But you do still always need pins. And the trick with pins is getting really nice, sharp ones. Invest the money in them. Okay, yes, you're going to lose some, but honestly, the sharper the better, and the better quality ones definitely stay sharper for longer. The clips are great because they don't pierce the fabric, so therefore you're not having to worry about it potentially ruining your fabric. So that's why you need super sharp ones, but I also really love the clips. They're actually my favorite thing, so I use them most. Also, this little jar that I have here is my go-to jar for everything that I need on hand when I am first starting any project, pretty much. That's why I have just a little jar full of that stuff. All right, also have your instruction book with you. If it's your first time using a sewing machine, this baby will save you a lot of headaches. Alrighty guys, these are a few extra little things that I have in my tray that I think you guys need as beginners. Alright, I actually have, oh, there you go. I didn't realize I even had 2 of these. So, Erasable fine line tip. I would get a slightly thicker tip. I don't really love how thin these are because they don't really draw on that well. These are just from Spotlight, so yeah, kind of annoying. Like, they're annoying because they're so thin, but they are so handy for drawing on things like notches and just, yeah, you definitely need these just every now and then. Mostly for notches, I use them. Marking out your darts as well, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's totally fine. You'll understand when you print off your first pattern and start creating that pattern. But trust me, get a packet of these, just maybe not the thin tip, maybe just a slightly thicker tip. All right, these scissors are tiny little scissors as well. These aren't for cutting your fabric out, that is for sure. These are for your little threads and annoying little pieces of things that you need to cut. I've got like 3 pairs and I lose all of them constantly, so have a few. Now, you might talk about this in a second. Obviously, tape measures. I've got a few different types. I have actually quite a few different types. Probably wondering why I have this very crooked sewing needle. That is great for turning things inside out and right side out, I should say. Great for corners as well, because you've got like, I like this one because it's got a little bit of a blunt end, but it's also got a pointy end. You can specifically buy things for that reason, but a sewing needle is just as handy. I've clearly put this one through the ringer. It is very bent out of shape. Can use Tailors chalk as well. This I don't think is Tailors chalk, because I think Tailors chalk is technically like a little square, so it's just like makes a nice straight neat line, but chalk is chalk in my eyes, and this is really only good for dark fabrics, so you can't really use it on I can't use it on very many of my things. That's why I use the erasable pen. So you can get water erasable pens as well, so just so you know, you can do different types of pens, but chalk or pen or both. All right, so a couple of other things that I want to talk about are different types of scissors. So excuse the mess over here, but this is a working area. So we have weights, Actually, I might come back to that. Hang on, sorry. I want to talk about the scissors. So I have fabric specific scissors. These are Fiskars. They're okay. They're nothing fabulous. They're quite stiff. That's what I don't like about them. I don't use these very often. I don't use these to cut my fabric. Oh, I don't use them to cut my entire pattern out. So that's why, yeah, I'm not that fussed if they're fabulous, but they're nice and sharp. That's what I do like about them. And then I also have my paper scissors, specifically for my cutting out my paper patterns. You do not use your good fabric scissors for paper. Do not do it. You hear me? Do not do it. Okay, so the other argument is in the sewing world is rotary cutters versus scissors. Scissors are good. Rotary cutter for me, all the way. I wish I had have done this sooner. I highly recommend this for a beginner because I just wish I had have known about these earlier. I thought these were more for just your quilters and things like that, but no, it is so not. These are so handy for garment sewing. They are kind of tricky to get used to, but I just wish I had have started earlier. I've got the smaller blade because I do a lot of kids patterns and I can get around my corners a lot easier with the smaller blade. If I do believe, say this, I think it's a 65 mil is better for quilters because generally the quilters are cutting in a straight line, so they don't need to get around the corners. So that's why I also went the 45 mil because I do have to get in and around corners quite a lot. Now, with the rotary cutters, there are so many different types. Again, different brands. I've just got the Olfa, and I found this a fantastic one just from Spotlight. Nothing too fancy. Blade desperately needs to be changed. This is my first blade. I haven't changed it since I started using them, and yeah, it needs a good change, but it still cuts, so it's just that it's a little bit harder. I got this one because I am a shocker for remembering to close the... So what happens is normally they would be... I think the other ones that I've seen, you have them out and then you have to actually manually press something else or do something else for it to go back in. I didn't want to risk that because I'm a massive hazard waiting to happen. That's why I got the one with the blade that goes in and out, and you can click it so that it stays out, and you can click it so that it stays in, and I find that super safe. Then at least for kids can't come along and, you know, squeeze it open. So rotary cutter, 100% recommend, but not a necessity again for beginners, but highly wish I had have done that earlier. But with a rotary cutter, there's a few extra things that you have to have. So I understand from sort of a money perspective that if you didn't want to spend extra money on like the cutting mat that is here, so this green cutting mat and the rotary cutter and these things, these weights that I'll talk about in a second, I understand why you'd just go scissors, because scissors are a lot more accessible and they are, yeah, a little bit cheaper in terms of not having to have extras. So this is a self-healing mat. It is quite worn. I have used it quite a lot. And I was just listening to Love to Sew podcast actually, and they were talking about cutting out patterns, and they were saying that you actually can wash these and get rid of all these burrs and stuff like that. Doesn't necessarily fully get rid of it, but apparently that can help it. So I might give that a go. If you like podcasts and you love sewing at the same time, Love to Sew podcast is definitely worth listening to because they are experts and they have some fantastic tips and hints throughout their entire podcast. So Rotary cutter and mat you have to have. You can't have one without, well, you can have obviously the mat without the rotary cutter if you wanted to, but it's kind of no point. But you can't have a rotary cutter and not a mat. You can have, there's different types of mats. This is self-healing. There's different types. So choose what fits your budget, I say. So there's that. And then I'll talk to you about the weights. So weights you will need for rotary cutting, because you don't move the fabric off the table. So you just pop these on the over the top of the paper of the pattern and the fabric, and it all stays together, and then you just rotary around it. So much easier, I find, than pinning and then being annoyed with scissors. I also have a few pens and textures around as well, just to mark things and write things on patterns. I find writing things on directly on the pattern sometimes is really handy too. By the way, these actually aren't proper like fabric weights. These are my husband's socket set things, and they're just nice and heavy. Perfect. And they're not too like big for kids patterns either. But then I also use this as well, which is like a giant crystal thing. It's actually a candle holder. So I just use that as well. I just sort of use anything around the house. I also use that candle sometimes. So use what you got in terms of that if you don't want to actually specifically buy the weights, which is totally understandable. The other thing is an iron. That seems pretty weird having an iron, but makes all the difference whatever iron you have. It doesn't matter. I have this little ironing board as well that's just a table ironing board. I've just got a piece of wool over the top of it just to make it thicker, because I'm needing to make a thick padded cover for it, but I just haven't gotten around to it. So that's another one on the list. So yeah, an iron and an ironing board, whatever one you like. And the last one is some thread and bobbins. My suggestion to you is a heap of bobbins. Just buy like a heap, like tons, because you fill them up so quickly. And I am going to rearrange this mess, and I'm going to try and do a bit of a rainbowy color coded thing going on there. Obviously wouldn't recommend having all of these all at once. Maybe buy a piece of fabric and buy this specific color thread to start with and go from there. But obviously having white and black is always handy, but in terms of colors, I'd buy when you have a piece of fabric in mind, because a lot of the fabric shops that I shop at have the matching threads in like on their website. So when you go and buy the fabric, it actually specifically says what what thread to use. So like for this one, this is hang on, just check. I don't know how to say it. Racent. I have no idea how to say it. So I'm not going to say it. So, but I was recommended this color fabric, oh my goodness, this color thread with, hang on, I'll show you the fabric. With this fabric, yes, it's a little sneaky peek for you. But yeah, so that fabric on the website had this suggested thread on it. So I just bought it. But of course, with a whole heap of threads comes lots of bobbins, and when you start using things like twin needles, which is a whole nother ball game, you need a few more. So yeah, basically just, oh, and good decent thread. So this, I don't know how to say it, I'm sorry, I'm not going to attempt it, but this thread is a pretty popular thread, and I know that like Gutermann, I think that's how you say it, Gutermann from, you can get this in Spotlight. I have never seen this one in Spotlight though, so I'm not sure about that one, but yeah, so, and I have like a few like cheaper ones, like Birch is a pretty, like it's a, yeah, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a top end brand, but it's a big brand and you can get it at Spotlight. So I use that one. Make sure your bobbins that you buy are specific to and fit your machine too, because these ones fit and then these ones do not fit my machine. These are actually from my nan, so, and her machine. They are like ever so slightly similar, but so different at the same time. Obviously one's plastic and one's, but I'll show you. So this one, right, and that one, not much of a difference. Obviously the little holes, but the holes don't really make any difference. It's the dimension, which is just ever so slightly different. It's just, honestly, so just double check that it's the right bobbin for your machine. Oh, and guys, I wanted to add one more thing to our list. The list could go on forever, but this is probably the number one I find for now. Technology. So I want you to have some sort of technology, whether it be a phone, an iPad, a tablet of some sort. Obviously I am a Apple user, so like I have my iPhone with me all the time, or my iPad with me all the time. I also have my laptop with me, so you will need some form of technology with you. So the reason I say this is because for me, I'm about saving as little money and have as little impact on the environment as possible. So that means printing off as little as possible as well. So when it comes to the instructions, I just use them on my iPad. I save them to files and I just read them straight from my iPad, and I find that is so helpful in saving on paper, saving on money, all that sort of thing as well. Alrighty guys, that's it from me. As always, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload. I am uploading every Sunday at the moment, so please make sure you tune in next Sunday as well. And I hope you had a great week, and I'll see you